There is a line from the Talmud that's been echoing in my mind since bringing my family to Israel following Gavin's bar mitzvah. I mentioned it last week, or at least I think I did. I was pretty jet-lagged, and I'm not sure if I actually did anything with the quote once I mentioned it during the sermon. But the quote goes, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Bazeh, that all Israel is responsible for one another. It's a phrase we teach our kids early on, often as a reminder of solidarity, that when one of us suffers, we all suffer. When one of us celebrates, we all celebrate. But I've been wondering lately, what does that really mean in a world where Israel no longer refers only to a people, but also to a state, and where the actions of that state and the suffering of its people ripple across the globe in ways that test our unity, our ethics, and our faith. While the trip to Israel was wonderful and everything we hoped it would be, from standing over the old city to putting notes that Matthew's class wrote in the wall, to sliding down the Mefletzet, the monster in Jerusalem. It was all wonderful, and so much more that we did. But we were also there during a very charged time. On one of our first days, we encountered a massive protest. This is not the protest itself, it's the aftermath of them leaving. But a massive protest of the nation's Haredi, demanding that they not be required to serve in the Israeli Defense Force, which was met by great critique from the rest of Israeli society, demanding that they, the Haredi, participate in protecting our country, that it shouldn't just be on one people to do, but Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Bazeh, that all Israel needs to care for one another, which means you need to fight too. And then there was the video of an Israeli soldier's alleged abuse of a Palestinian detainee, which was leaked by a former military advocate general. We were there for her disappearance and her arrest, and we were there during the World Zionist Congress, where thanks to your efforts, the Progressive Bloc advanced resolutions dear to us, protecting progressive communities, supporting lone soldiers, calling for an inquiry into the failures that allowed October 7th, and blocking monies going to build settlements in the West Bank. And those victories didn't come easy. There was so much infighting between Jews, yelling, cursing, accusing ones of being Christians, not Jews. It was appalling. All of these events showed an Israel wrestling with itself. This has been a year, 2 years really, of deep rupture in the Jewish life. Deep rupture amongst Jews worldwide. The war in Gaza dragged on far longer than anyone dared imagine. Hostages have come home, some alive, some not. The funerals have not stopped. The protests haven't either. Israel's political life feels like it's tearing itself apart from within. And the world's patience for Israel, for Jews, sometimes even for the truth itself, feels dangerously thin. As Jews, we feel very vulnerable and pulled in almost every direction in terms of our allegiances and our politics. Whose rabbi signed which letter or gave which sermon about what topic or which mayoral candidate? It feels like we are pulling ourselves apart by being asked to take a particular side or vision. However, our tradition has always asked Jews to live with what I call dual vision. We are both particular and universal at the same time. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? We are commanded to love our own and also to love the stranger, to defend ourselves and to pursue peace, to remember to wipe out Amalek and to beat our swords into plowshares. But this dual vision is exhausting. As a people, there are Jews who find themselves torn between grief for Israelis still mourning and compassion for Gazans whose lives have been shattered, between pride in Israel's resilience and strength and dismay at its leadership, between fear of our own safety and fear of what we might become if we harden our hearts. It's no wonder so many of us feel spiritually disoriented. There's a line from the book of Psalms, where the psalmist cries out, "If only I had wings like a dove, I would fly away and rest." I think many of us may feel achingly familiar with the psalmist, especially with how we are feeling pulled apart from one another, how our political atmosphere has become so rancorous, how we're constantly thrown into the kettle. And God, don't we just want to break from it all? And yet our tradition insists, don't fly away. Don't disengage. Stay present in the struggle, because Jewish faith is not about escape. It's about transformation. It's about asking, how do we live responsibly and compassionately in a world that refuses to be simple? There's a story from Pirkei Avot that says, "It is not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you free to desist from it." That line was meant for our ancestors building the moral foundations of Jewish life, but it applies just as powerfully to Israel itself, our people, our state. The modern state of Israel was never meant to be the fulfillment of the dream. It was meant to be the workshop where the dream is built, a place where Jewish sovereignty could meet Jewish values, where tzedek, mishpat, v'chesed, justice, righteousness, and compassion would animate national life. And yet that workshop has grown noisy and raw. We have seen nationalism harden into cruelty and righteous defense blur into moral blindness. We've seen politics turn toxic, dividing Israeli from Israeli, religious from secular, Mizrahi from Ashkenazi, Jew from Arab, left from right. And we see a reflection of that here as well, where we feel torn from one another too. But if we love Israel, truly love her, then our love cannot be blind. The prophets of our tradition didn't mince words when their leaders failed. Isaiah thundered, "Your hands are full of blood. Learn to do good, seek justice, rescue the oppressed." Real love tells truth. Real love demands accountability. Real love mourns what is lost and still refuses to give up on what might yet be redeemed. And as Israel wrestles with itself, so too does the Jewish world. For decades, we've relied on Israel as our emotional anchor, a source of pride, connection, and identity. But many Jews today, especially younger ones, feel alienated or conflicted. They see the news and ask, is this still my Israel? Do I have any connection to that land? And in the face of rising anti-Semitism, others double down, clinging tighter, afraid that any critique might give fuel to our enemies. Both impulses, withdrawal and defensiveness, comes from the same place, fear. And that fear is understandable. That fear is in front of us every day, in every news article, in every place that we look, in swastikas that we see suddenly pop up overnight after an election. But neither withdrawal or defensiveness will sustain us. We need something deeper. We need a Judaism that can hold complexity, that can pray for soldiers and civilians, for captives and refugees, without collapsing into slogans or silence. We need a global Jewish conversation that is less about who is right and more about what is right. And we need communities like ours here in New Brunswick, to be sanctuaries of moral courage, places where we can disagree without demeaning, weep without despairing, and act without losing our humanity. So where do we find hope? For me, it comes in small, stubborn signs. It comes from Israelis who, despite everything, still volunteer to bring aid across battle lines. It comes from Palestinian doctors treating Jewish patients, and from Jewish hospitals saving Arab lives. It comes from parents, Israeli and Palestinian, who have lost children and yet meet in shared grief to say, we will not let hate have the last word. And it comes from us, from communities like ours who keep showing up, who keep lighting candles, teaching Torah, singing Shalom Rav with trembling voices, believing that peace is still possible, even if it seems impossibly far away. The Midrash says that when the Israelites stood at Sinai, they saw the thunder and heard the lightning. The world was turned upside down, and only then could they hear God's voice. Maybe that's what this moment is, a world turned upside down, straining to reveal something sacred. Perhaps God's voice is not the certainty in our arguments, but in the trembling between them. Our Torah portion this week, Chayei Sarah, opens with the death of Sarah. But its name, Chayei Sarah, means the life of Sarah. It reminds us that Jewish life has always been about what we do after loss, about choosing life even when the world is broken. So tonight, as we pray for Israel, for all who dwell within her borders, let us also pray for ourselves, for the strength to stay compassionate, curious, and connected, for the courage to be honest about our pain and about our pride, and for the wisdom to remember that being a Jew in this moment, with all its fear, frustration, and faith, is still an act of profound hope. Because all Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Bazeh, all Israel, all Jews, all humanity are bound up in one another's fate. And if we can hold that truth even through the storm, then maybe, just maybe, we can help bring a little more light into this dark and complicated world. Shabbat Shalom.